Hello and welcome to the Deep to NBA podcast. My name's Sean. Joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boff. Mr. Boff, my man, how are we?
I'm good, Sean. I'm extremely excited for today's episode.
Yeah. This is like a Deep 2 classic, you know. This is one of the best podcasts out there for us, and definitely one of our best podcasts for the past 2 years. But Dante, that prompts the question, what are we talking about today?
Well, I mean, listeners will know, Sean, that if there's one thing that we love on this podcast, it's accountability. Accountability for the good takes as well as the bad ones. So we're doing our annual preseason over-under review. So we've gone back to episode 87 and 88, looked at all of the predictions we made at the start of last season for teams over-unders compared to the Vegas lines. And today we're going to face some music for it, good and bad. I'm gonna have to answer for my Dallas Mavericks takes. That's what we're here. That's what we're here to do. So
Yeah.
feet to the fire, nowhere to hide. That's what we're about here.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Accountability, etc. And let's just start it off. Let's go in alphabetical order, coming from the Western Conference, and we'll start off with the Dallas Mavericks. So their number was set at 42.5, and they added Josh Richardson, James Johnson, Tyrell Terry, Josh Green, and they lost Seth Curry, DeLon Wright, JJ Barea. We both went over on this 42.5 number, and Dallas finished with 42 wins. So we both get a loss there. And my thought process here, it's actually kind of funny reading back in our old notes and seeing that what actually went into this over prediction was Kristaps Porzingis is going to come back on January 1st. And I guess we thought Kristaps Porzingis was going to be more of a savior than an issue when he actually hits the court. So this is sort of good, the fact that they could even reach 42 wins with their second star not being star worthy. But yeah, look, we've both missed here, but it was very close.
I listened to this episode a few days ago, episode 88. And I just one of the things that I said was like, oh, like if Kristaps Porzingis only plays like 2/3 of the games, like no stress, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. They added Josh Richardson, they got really big, no problems. And I was listening back and I was like, bro, what are you talking about? If their second best player only plays 2/3 of the games, and yeah, you're right. Like it was. I don't think we accounted for quite how long the runway would need to be for him to get back to anything resembling previous form. And arguably he just didn't get there. So, they ended up getting, like half a game below the line, which is a testament to Luka. But pretty much every move that they made went wrong. I mean, like looking at this, the Seth for Josh trade, trading Seth Curry to the Sixers. I love that move. I was like, let's get big on the wings around Luka, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And Dwight Powell was recovering from an Achilles injury at the start of the season, and he didn't really play. So it's just like a healthy dose of Maxi Kleber in KP's absence. And I think we both kind of grossly underestimated what that means. I know that you're a bit of a Maxi guy, but not a Maxi guy for half the season as your best big.
Well, he also had a down year, but I think we've sort of missed on Josh Richardson because we were like, okay, well, he had a bad year in Philly, maybe he can recoup some value in Dallas. And it's like, no, this is just how he plays now. He's just bad at basketball. And James Johnson, I mean, I remember that James Johnson year where he was in Miami and he had that sort of like, Draymond Green-esque role where he was defending 5 positions and he was the distributor for this really wacky team that just missed the playoffs by 1 game. He was irrelevant and just got traded halfway through the season, pretty much as a salary dump to the Pelicans, I believe. So not a great offseason. And at least they followed it up with this most recent offseason by firing the general manager and hiring fucking Jason Kidd as their coach.
Yeah, and their new GM is a shoe executive. So I can think of probably a few like assistant GMs who are like 52 and they've been grinding since they were 31 years old in like NBA front offices to try and get even an interview for a GM role. And then Mavs are like, anyway, this guy from Nike, we're gonna give him the job. No hate to Nico Harrison, the new GM. I don't know anything about him, but he's a shoe executive. So we'll see how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we do the over-unders for next season.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to Denver then.
So the Denver Nuggets, their number was set at 44.5, and you went under, I went over. They finished with 47, so I get that point, you get no point. But they added last season, they added Campazzo, JaMychal Green, RJ Hampton through the draft, Isaiah Hartenstein, who I was surprisingly high on, and they converted Bol to a main contract, and they lost Torrey Craig, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, and Kader Bates.
No. Who?
Torrey Craig Bueller. And I wrote that they did the right thing by not paying Jeremy Grant $20 million a year. And yes, he fell off in the second or the last third of the season, but he was having just an incredible season and became something that I honestly didn't think he had in him as just like this go-to option on a bad team, albeit, but still as a guy who just developed so fucking much over the offseason. So they sort of lost by losing Jeremy Grant, but Nikola Jokic and 2/3 of a season from Jamal Murray was enough to push them over.
Yeah, I think I kind of in the same way that with the Mavericks, I was like, they got Luka. It's no stress. Like they'll be fine. I didn't quite give that gravitas to Jokic, which obviously, the bloke went on to win the MVP. So like my bad there. And I don't know with this one because they very easily could have kind of slid under. And I know that they were, for a lot of the season, looking until Jamal Murray went down, looking at genuine title chances. And in a regular season, 47 puts you like 55, 56 games. So they were like genuinely like a top tier team until the very end. But the Grant thing is crazy. And I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that he fell off, because he went from averaging 23 points a game on like 48% shooting and like 37 from three for like a terrible team carrying the whole offensive load to averaging like 20 on like 44, And
he started the season next to Blake Griffin. We'll talk about this next episode when we do the Detroit thing. But like that team changed a lot in the time he was there. Like he was playing with Mason Plumlee and Derrick Rose at the start of the year.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams where like every single player discussion that we had at the start of last season was just completely irrelevant by halfway through the season because there's that much roster turnover.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. Not to kind of like predict forward, but they're kind of churning through these big wings at the moment with Millsap potentially not coming back. Torrey Craig has been gone for a while. JaMychal Green is gone.
No, JaMychal Green re-signed.
Oh, I thought JaMychal Green went to the Clippers.
No, he re-signed on actually less annual value.
Okay, well, my last point was going to be Jeremy Grant, so 3 out of 4. Just pretend I didn't say that.
Yeah.
And my point on the previous, on the over-under show for Denver was I don't know how they're going to match up against big wings in the playoffs, because they're just like losing all of their guys. And I think looking forward, I'm still a bit concerned about that because
does Jeff Green not change the equation?
Well, I mean, Jeff Green at this point in his career is probably not someone who you're throwing on a big all-star wing and saying like, that's it, you don't have to worry about it. Like Jeff Green's great because he gives you positional flexibility and he can guard, like a 7 out of 10 wing pretty well. And he can, guard a small ball 5 well, but he's not like
elite. Yeah.
Yeah. He's not lock up, and there's no one, by virtue of having MPJ on the floor, you have like one less spot for putting someone in there who can actually defend. Yeah, but I mean, like Jokic, you're not saying like throw down the gauntlet to Embiid and like lock him up.
Well, and like they still have Aaron Gordon. I believe in Aaron Gordon's ability to defend the wing.
True. But now that's a fair point.
Now, I could talk about this for a long time, Dante, but the thing with Denver is that with Jamal Murray's injury, because it happened late in the season during the COVID-shortened season, he's going to come back next year closer to the playoffs than the April timeline that he actually injured himself. So when he injured himself, there was like 24 games remaining. And then like, let's say if he comes back a calendar year, he's not going to come back with 24 games left because that was a shorter season and the timeline was all out of whack. So he's probably going to miss all of next year. If he does come back, he'll be ready just for the playoffs. And do you really want to throw this like post ACL injured dude right into the playoffs after like not playing for 12 months of basketball? So look at Denver through the lens of competing for 2022-23. That is the year that they will try and go for a championship. So when you look at this roster, you say, oh, is Austin Rivers going to hold up? Oh, is Jeff Green ready? Jeff Green is part of the solution for the 2022-23 season. And I believe, and I'm fucking crossing every appendage I have, I believe that they're going to try and bolster that wing defense, bolster some inside defense, whether that be like getting some crazy veteran backup center, like a Marcus Gasol type, if someone just push all your chips forward, just say, okay, we've got these young dudes. Let's just maybe trade them just for some more present value for the 2022-23 season, because look, Jamal's injured and that then be the times. So yes, you're right. How the fuck's this team going to stop anyone next year if you're looking forward to the future? But just worry about how they're going to stop people in 2022-23.
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean, I have points on the future of this team, but considering that this is a review podcast and not a projections podcast,
true.
I think that's a good place to leave it. Look, lucky you though. We're going from your first favorite team, the Denver Nuggets, to your second favorite team, the Golden State Warriors. 2 in a row.
I'm a Warriors fan. But
okay.
Obviously, if we're going by the alphabet, the next team I have to go for is the Houston Rockets. But yes, the Golden State Warriors, their number was set at 37.5. They added Kent Bazemore, Nico Mannion, Kelly Oubre, Brad Wanamaker, and Big Jim. Notable losses were Kai Bowman and Klay Thompson to injury. We both went over, and there were actually a few talking heads who like very notably were like, hang on, this Warriors team's kind of shit. Like Kent Bazemore's playing crunch time. We both went over, and Golden State went over by a game and a half and obviously missed the playoffs. So this is, we were sort of predicting them to be maybe a lock for the playoffs, but the fact that they lost the play-in and all that happened, we probably weren't predicting that. But nevertheless, we went over, and they went over the actual, they went over the line. Oh yeah, you're highlighting Brad Wanamaker. I forgot to say Brad Wanamaker.
No, you said him, but I just want to talk about him.
Go on.
We were both like, oh, that's good, Brad Wanamaker. But just like, Steph's coming back of injury, we don't know how he's going to be. Like, that's good. Just get Brad Wanamaker in there. He'll really shore up the second. Bloke did not even play. Yeah. Bloke did not even play the whole season. Shows what we know. He just did not work for these Golden State Warriors. And I mean, like, it's a credit to them that they managed to get over their projection because
Steph better.
like Steph kind of put up an MVP caliber season, but listening back to this episode, my point was like, damn, you say Steph, and then it's like, okay, like who else is there? Little did I know that Kelly Oubre was going to be worse, like much worse.
Yeah.
And we're, slowly witnessing the evolution of Draymond Green, where he's like losing his arms. He's like losing his rotator cuff and the ability to lift his arms above his head so he can't shoot anymore.
Yeah.
He's just like developing that new feature.
I think it's called transitioning to media.
Yeah, well, he can lift his arm just enough to get the microphone to his mouth, but no further. This team's thin as going into the season behind Steph, and like relied a lot on Wiseman, who was terrible, which means you're relying a lot on Looney, who.
Be careful. Be careful with your next words.
Hey, I know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the Looney Tunes cheer squad over here. But he's far from his heyday of 2016-17, just like defending guards on the perimeter. Like, he kind of looks like you put a black and white photo of Kevin Looney up, and it's like, this dude is playing with this
Kevin
Kevon. Sorry, of Kevon Looney. You put a black and white photo up, and it's like, this dude was playing with Bill Walton, because he's got the fucking big knee pads, and he just moves around like he's got like no ligaments left. They've all just been snapped out.
Yeah.
And so behind Steph, they were thin as, and obviously, he kind of dragged them there. And for everything that I've said about Draymond offensively, like he's still a really good facilitator, and he's still kind of really helped with their dribble handoff game and keeping the movement going.
And
But
he's in the defensive player of the year conversation.
Yeah, and he's still a top level defender. But this season really was all Steph. So Steph back to his best, arguably, as good as some of his previous seasons at age 30, whatever he is. So this was all Steph. And unfortunately for you and the Warriors, it was all LeBron seeing 3 rims that stopped you from making the playoffs.
Yeah, and like we got saved by this number by James Wiseman getting injured, Golden State going on a run post All-Star, and that post All-Star run encapsulating one Jordan Poole, who had just returned from the Gubble, the G League bubble, and had all the confidence in the world. And as I wrote for the Deep2.com, he's now going to move into his most improved player campaign next year.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. I am drinking significantly less Kool-Aid of 27 good Jordan Poole games than you are, but I guess we shall see.
All right. Well, the bar's open if you want to come. Monty McNair's here with me. We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly, with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right, and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, 2 steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingAds.org.au/get-gambling-off-SBS with hyphens in between.
The next team on our list is Houston Rockets, whose number was set at 34.5. Now, you went under, I went over. They won 17 games. So at the time, though, their notable additions were DeMarcus Cousins, Jay Sean Tate, Christian Wood, and John Wall. And their notable losses were Russ Westbrook, Robert Covington, Jeff Green, and Austin Rivers. They hadn't lost James Harden at the time. And my thought process for going over was, if James Harden just plays until the All-Star break, they're just going to accidentally win games. And then after a Harden trade, I've written here that a lineup of John Wall, Eric Gordon, some small forward, maybe a Karis LeVert type, Christian Wood, and Boogie will just stumble into 40 games, which I could not be more wrong. And obviously, James Harden getting traded 9 games into the season just sort of threw this out for me. So Dante, please take your victory lap.
This is one of the few ones where I'm gonna take a proper victory lap because. I was just so off every single player on this team. You were talking yourself into John Wall, and I was like, let's wait and
I
see.
did it for 2 years, man.
Yeah.
Which probably says something about why I shouldn't have been doing it, because he didn't play basketball for 2 years.
Yeah. It got a bit hairy for the Rockets, didn't it? I was hard under. For all the reasons you said. Obviously, we knew Harden was going to be out of there at some point, but I was just looking at the rest of the roster thinking there's not heaps there. And Christian Wood played really, really well before he got hurt. But there is a possibility. I don't want to tag him with this label, but there is a possibility that Christian Wood is just a 23-11 player in a loss. I don't really understand the mystical, like, does he contribute to winning basketball? Like, what is winning basketball? How can you be putting up crazy stats and like not contribute to winning basketball? I don't really get it, but it does kind of exist, and it's a possibility that Christian Wood is that sort of player. And I mean, like, Shawnee, Boogie at the 5. Come on,
I know.
that is. I mean, like, Boogie is like a revived corpse at this point.
Oh,
like,
no, he's not even revived, man. He's a corpse.
Yeah, he's
like,
literally just like
he didn't play for the injury-riddled Clippers in the playoffs.
Yeah, poor Boogie. Poor Boogie. There's like 5 years ago, he was the undisputed best big in the NBA. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have heaps more to say. Like, my victory lap, I'm happy to curtail it, but this is just a lesson. Like, I don't want to be preachy here, but this is a lesson for you and listeners. Don't put your faith in John Wall. Like, if there's any situation in which your decision-making process rests on, John Wall will be all right. If that's one of the options, go the other way. Just go the other way.
Yeah.
In 2 years, when John Wall is off this massive contract and he signs for a playoff team, go for it, because I believe that John Wall can do the Reggie Jackson and be instrumental for a team's deep playoff run.
Wear all the gear.
Yeah, wear all the gear. Look like some dude at fucking Coburg, like fucking wannabe. Until that happens, until he's off this contract, if there's any decision-making process that involves John Wall being good, go the other way. That's my life advice.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good, man. Listen to this man. He knows what he's talking about. Poor John Wall, but I can't wait till he's just a veteran chasing a championship in 23-24. The next team on our list are the LA Clippers. Their number was set at 47. Their notable additions were Nick Batum, Serge Ibaka, Luke Kennard, who you and I were extraordinarily high on. And speaking of high, we've got Kai Sky Bowman. They lost Jermichael Green, Montrezl Harrell, Rodney McGruder, Landry Shamet. And now they ended up with 47 wins, and we both went under, but they just smashed that. They smashed that 47 right on. So we both get no point there. But what was your thought process here for the Clippers?
Well, the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that we opened up our free agency pod last year with joking about Nick Batum signing a minimum deal with the Clippers. Because we thought we were so funny. We were like, all right, let's get into all the important news. All right, Shawnee, and now Nick Batum has signed a minimum deal. We're at just the height of comedy. And the bloke turns around and puts his in his best season.
The Renaissance.
7 years, and he's banging in corner threes and locking up people in the fucking playoffs, not to mention for France, just like
he blocked Lucas,
Olympic gold medal saving block. So I mean, that's the first one. I mean, I guess we kind of like missed on Kennard, right? Because he
was supposed to be a creator, but he can't create.
He was bad.
Yeah.
Even before losing his rotation spot to Terrence Mann. And, we're talking about the on-court stuff, but they traded for him and signed him to a $16 million per year contract. I think he's on a 4-year, $64 million contract.
But a lot of it's actually non-guaranteed. He's closer to 4 for 40 than he was 4 for 64.
Well, man, are you comfortable if Luke Kennard was in free agency this year, is any team throwing the full mid-level at him? I probably think not.
No, not at all.
So that's a huge. I mean, I've been, it's no secret, I've been very high on Kennard for a few years now, thinking that he could be a really good like tertiary creator. Can play some 2, can play some 3. Not going to defend anyone, but good enough off the dribble to get by, kind of herky jerky.
Yeah,
great 3-point shooter, and it just didn't happen for him. Then Ty Lue just said, "All right, mate, like see." See you later. And Ibaka didn't really play much either.
Is this the end of Serge Ibaka?
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be. Like he was like out for what do you miss? Like half the season, possibly more.
He played in 41 games. Fuck it, it doesn't feel like 41 games. It felt like much less.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised that it was even that high.
Mm.
So I mean, yeah, this was all Kawhi and PG being really fucking good that they managed to perfectly hit their projected number, and obviously like going through the whole season, you know, regardless of the number or the positioning, it felt like they were you know, dyed in the wool championship contender.
Yeah.
And obviously until Kawhi kind of went down, that was the case. And I mean, they made a good fist of it against my Phoenix Suns in the conference finals with the aforementioned, you know, John Wall prototype, Reggie Jackson,
It's
you
going
know,
nuts.
lighting it up.
That must have been so frustrating for you to watch. Like you obviously want your team to win. You think you've just got this massive chance because Kawhi's out, and then Reggie Jackson just wins them a couple of games.
Yeah, well, I mean, like it was less frustrating than if it was PG, like, you know, propelling them to victory.
Yeah.
I very much like the PG can't get it done in the playoffs narrative. I don't know why, but it really resonates with me. And to be honest, like I kind of have a soft spot for Clippers Reggie Jackson, which is saying something because I genuinely fucking hate the Clippers. I find them so distasteful. But seeing Reggie Jackson out there and then crying, you know, after they were eliminated, being like tearful, being like, "This team saved me, man. This team saved me." I'm like, fucking, you go get that 2-year, $22 million extension. Reggie.
Yeah. Like
you deserve it.
Fair play to him for doing that. And like, obviously that's a nice story, but fuck, man, like if you're the Clippers, you would much rather just have a Reggie Jackson on a minimum contract now that he's actually properly played and there's expectations. It's like, okay, now do it for a full season. How old are you again? Oh, okay, no, this there's a tiny bit of disaster potential.
Yeah, and I mean, he wasn't good in Detroit since the first season that he played there, which I believe was 2017 or maybe even 2016. So
fun fact, he actually he was so nervous before starting for the Pistons as like his big break, he actually vomited before the game.
see, he's just so likable, except for all of the times he was extremely unlikable and also bad at basketball. But it's water under the bridge, Reg. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the other team in LA, the Lakers. Their number was set at 47.5. They added Marc Gasol, Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, and Dennis Schroeder, and they lost Avery Bradley, Danny Green, Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and Rajon Rondo. You hit the over, I hit the under. I get a point here because they went to 42 wins as opposed to 47. And yeah, this was just injuries sort of saved me here. I mean, I didn't say that I'd written how many games does LeBron play, and the Taylor Horton Tucker hype train was in full swing, and I just happened to get right with LeBron getting injured, and obviously Anthony Davis. Like, is he ever not injured? So, yeah, what do you think about this?
It's just injuries. I mean, like, it's important to remember that before the injuries, they were first in the West. LeBron was the presumptive MVP. So like this team, although it didn't look like it down the stretch, and like our overwhelming impression, you know, of them in the playoffs is like first round exit, and like Marc Gasol looked a bit washed, and like Montrezl just like did not fit at all.
Yeah.
Dennis Schroeder, what's he doing there? For the first 30 or so games of the season, they were like 23-7. So it did work, and it's literally just you know, AD is a brittle bodied player, and LeBron, you know, he missed some time, but I think there's probably merit in the idea that even compared to like when he was in Cleveland, he missed some time there and he came back and he was LeBron again. Like now he's 36, so maybe, you know, the ramp up time is a little bit more. So he comes back and he's not quite the same. Obviously they slipped down to the 7 seed. So this is one, you know, cop on the chin, injuries, luck of the draw. I'm happy to take the L here. But yeah, this team was very good and was like on track to be the 1 seed before it all got derailed by forces outside their control.
Also, like Marc Gasol had a bad season. Montrezl Harrell, as you said, didn't fit, and it's like it's a really weird place to try and like recoup some value on a team next to LeBron and Anthony Davis playing fucking your position. And then Dennis Schroeder got offered 4 for 84 at the start of the season, and obviously didn't play well enough to warrant a 4 for 84 at the end of the season.
He just wanted you know, an 8. What is it? Would be a 9-digit contract with a number that started with 1. That was what he wanted.
What a
kook. What an absolute fucking kook. I'd love to I wonder what he's like. I'd love to get a beer with him and just listen to him say things,
We've both seen the photo because for some reason, when I was like 16, I followed all these NBA players on Instagram. And I think you did as well, because I remember you and I talking about the fact that he bought a Lambo that was like stenciled in like some Atlanta Hawks colors and shit, and he's just like sitting in front of it, and it looks like one of those memes, where people like really distort the image, and it's just got some dude like holding up like gang signs, and it's like the stacks follow me, and like just really like cringe meme stuff. Like he's pretty much just the source of all these images that I get on my feed now, just from all these meme pages.
He's a kook. He's a kook.
Yeah, I'll just
say him and Marcus Smart in the Celtics backcourt next season. That is going to be,
man. They got some G's out there in Boston. That's the sort of shit,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the Memphis Grizzlies, whose number was set at 32. They added Desmond Bane. They lost Josh Jackson and Anthony Tolliver. You hit the under, I hit the over, and the Memphis Grizzlies got 38 wins, smacking the over, beating my Golden State Warriors to make the playoffs and steal a game against the Utah Jazz before losing. Jaren Jackson Jr., was he injured heading into this season? I think he injure himself in the bubble, which is so unfortunate. And also something that we can talk about when we do a little bit of future projecting is Jaren Jackson Jr. Extension eligible this season. What the fuck do you do with that?
I think you wait and see two things. A, if he can play on the court, and B, you just have a conversation. You're like, Jaren, we need you to grab a rebound here and there and see what he says. And if he's like, yeah, I can do it, I can get you 7 a game, then you extend him. And if he's like, I don't know, man, I'm going to continue averaging 5.9 despite being 6'11" and playing the 4, then it's a conversation. This team just did it all with Ja Morant and then depth. I think it's probably not an overstatement to say that they were the deepest team in the league this year, and they were getting like extremely good contributions from fucking rookies,
like John Conchar as well, like blokes like that.
Yeah, completely random players. Xavier Tillman came in, played really well. Desmond Bane, their first round pick, and then just like rolling out fucking DeAnthony Melton, who they stole from Phoenix.
Yeah.
Tyus Jones being one of the best, the best backups in the league, and then Ja Morant being really good.
Yeah, and Ja Morant missed time as well. Remember, he missed like 3 weeks after an injury in like game 2.
Yeah, I think he took a while to kind of like ramp up, but they got like, great play from slow-mo. Kyle Anderson had the best year of his career. Dylan Brooks, love him or hate him.
I hate him.
But he was kind of okay for them as well. So they just kind of had they got like 12 good players, and on any given night, 7 of them would be playing really well. And even if like Jar's not playing well or Jar's not there, it's like if you get like the best game from 7 of your guys, you're going to be fine. And that's what they did on a night-to-night basis. And also it turns out that Taylor, what's his name? Funny looking coach.
Taylor Harris. Taylor Jenkins.
Taylor Jenkins. Turns out Taylor Jenkins is like one of these fun experimental coaches who's like, all right, we're going to do things a bit differently, which is a bit of fresh air for a franchise that potentially hasn't always done that.
Memphis are doing everything right. Like we're talking about it in the group chat, but all the moves that they're making, like grabbing an asset to take on Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe, and then just being able to like turn around and trade Eric Bledsoe a couple of days later for Pat Beverly and like pieces, and then move Pat Beverly obviously got moved again. It's just like, again, what the fuck are you doing, David Griffin? Like we'll talk about the Pelicans in 2 turns, but like, what the fuck are you doing? Like it took Memphis literally a fortnight to move Eric Bledsoe without giving up any assets. Why wasn't that trade there for New Orleans? Why couldn't they have just traded him for Pat Bev and like pieces? It's like, what are you doing? But Memphis obviously come out top because they got the asset and they got to get off the player for nothing.
I think it's really interesting, like just in taking like a league-wide view, that in the last kind of 18 months, it seems like the it seems really obvious, like the difference between a good GM and a bad GM.
Yeah.
Because previously the criteria was like, oh, like, Pat Riley got LeBron James, that's fucking amazing. It's like, who could swing the superstar trade? And now you're kind of looking at it from a different perspective. And, I like to bring up this example of Elton Brand and Daryl Morey when he got to Philly. Daryl Morey came in and like everyone was saying, oh, Philly's fucks. They've locked themselves in on all these terrible contracts. They've got 4 dudes who are making near max money. They've got no shooting. And Daryl Morey was like, bro, don't even sweat it. And literally just like spun a few assets, dumped Al Horford, like did this, did that. And all of a sudden, we're looking at Philly, going into season being like, wow, this is great. And for all of the, flaws that they demonstrated in the postseason, like Philly was fucking the 1 seed. So
and like more Ben Simmons flaws rather than Daryl Morey flaws.
Yeah. And I think Memphis is kind of exhibiting the same sort of thing. And you're right to bring up David Griffin as someone who potentially isn't as good as exploiting the back end of the roster, like, and contract game, because it's not as simple as it used to be even 5 years ago when you're rebuilding. It's like you get young players and you surround them with shooters and some veterans, and then you just like go, like your team just services itself. It's like a self-oiling machine. Like it's not as simple as that. And Memphis being so lithe and versatile and reactive to things going on around them and being very opportunistic is really impressive. I think that like Zach Lowe and Kevin O'Connor, among others, have been saying for a little while now that because they've got so many kind of good players, this is a team that could use a bit of consolidation and turning 3 good players into 1 great player. But they didn't do that last year, and we saw them, with Ja being really good. They pumped out 38, so 38 wins, and hopefully Jaren Jackson stays healthy this year.
Yeah,
so I think that on the court, off the court, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and like it's this isn't the point of this podcast, but just like compare Memphis to Charlotte, where you've got Charlotte who have their future point. Both teams have their future point guard on a rookie contract and are looking like they're going to get much better. But you look at Memphis and they've made the playoffs, and then they actually made playoffs 2 years in a row. Oh no, sorry, they just missed out in the bubble. But they've made the playoffs with this roster, and it looks really good. But instead of saying, okay, let's just like keep going, like let's just keep going into the playoffs, they're like, no, let's use our instead of just like continuing with this core that has clearly made the playoffs. So like, no, let's like keep surrounding Ja with better players. So then they make that trade with New Orleans to get to take on poor contracts while getting that who's the dude they drafted from Stanford, I believe?
Zaire Williams.
Yeah, like they took a swing. They went up in the draft. They're trying to get more dudes to come in because they know that no one's going to sign in Memphis, right? And maybe they can do that consolidation trade, but you're better off just having all these dudes on rookie contracts and just trying to get better and trying to be that team that is going to have that that OKC level of just like pure young players on rookie contracts and like just heaps of assets moving forwards, which is just like so much better compared to Charlotte, where it's like, okay, Charlotte's like, we drafted this dude. Okay, let's sign Gordon Hayward. Let's sign this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And it's like, okay, you're good enough to make the playoffs. You're going to have a bad pick. You're not using your cap space to get more picks. This is your team. This is your team locked in. And then now when it comes time for LaMelo Ball to sign a contract extension, he's going to look around, and all the dudes who have been on big contracts with him, like Kelly Oubre as well, they're all going to be aging and way past LaMelo's window. And then LaMelo's like, all right, well, who's rising with me? We've got Miles Bridges, who I'm not that high on, and James Bouknight, who we haven't seen play a basketball game yet. And what are you doing? Like, where are you going? Because you've sort of just locked this team. If only there's a term for it, like the treadmill of mediocrity. But it's just like just comparing these two franchises that have star point guards and just the different ways they tackle it. And yeah, this has turned into a bit of a Memphis circle jerk, hasn't it?
It has, but I mean, they don't deserve the full jerk, but they deserve, at least a pat on the back.
Like an arousal pat on the back.
Yeah. A rub.
Let's move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves, whose number was set at 29. They added Anthony Edwards, Ed Davis, Ricky Rubio, Rondo Hollis-Jefferson, and they lost James Johnson and Amari Spellman. You went over. I went under. I win. You probably underrated the fact that Karl Anthony Towns just had a shocker of a season. Obviously, had the personal issues going on. COVID just was really unfair to him, and he didn't play much of the season, which is completely fair enough. And injuries, etc. And look, this is just another one of those teams that they've got this core. They get fucking shared around on Bleacher Report every day, but as soon as the season starts, it's like, oh, they're not that good.
Yeah. What was I thinking?
Um,
Someone slapped me from like the start of the season. Fuck, I'm never ever putting my eggs in the mini basket again, because I mean, like, hindsight's 2020, but like, looking back on it, even if Kat didn't have just the mother of all years in terms of basketball and life coming together in horrible ways for him, like we got Russell in like 10 games in. It was like, oh wait, he's not that good.
Light years, baby.
Yeah, light years. I mean, Ricky Rubio, we know what Rick does. Rick does what Rick does. It's a pity that he's not Olympic Rick, because holy shit, that guy, he deservedly made the Olympic All-Star 5 post-tournament, because he just was shredding people putting up like 32 on the reg. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Ricky Rubio has now moved on, which I think is an indication of how the season kind of went, that everybody gets kind of, I don't want to say sucked in, because it's not like Ricky Rubio himself is ever doing any false advertising, but you're like, yeah, Ricky Rubio, solid professional point guard play, and then you get him and that's all that he gives you, and you're kind of like, oh, I wish we kind of had a little bit more, but he just is unable to give you any more. Cat missed probably like 25 games. I think D'Lo only played 40 games, so this was a lot of Anthony Edwards, who's shown a disposition to shoot and not really do much else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the last like 20 games of the season, he bumped those scoring numbers way up, and he bumped the efficiency numbers slightly up, but overall he's still like a huge question mark. We had a conversation on the East over unders podcast, just off the cuff, like, who do you think that the worst 5 coaches are in the NBA? And Ryan Saunders' name was floated in there, and he quickly proved us to be correct. And you probably feel a bit better about them going forward with Chris Finch, who seemed to be a little bit better. But I mean, overall, like, it was a pretty grim season, and I think I've, much like you should learn your lesson about putting any faith in John Wall, I've kind of like learned my lesson about putting any faith in the Timberwolves.
Yeah, fair enough. And it's I noted here that Rondo Hollis-Jefferson was on the training camp roster, and he was probably the best power forward on the whole entire roster, and they didn't actually give him a full contract. He ended up playing for Portland last year, but didn't actually play basketball for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he would have been the best defender on the whole entire roster on a minimum contract. But yeah, I don't think RHJ is going to change the number too much here.
No. Well, and they played Wancho a little bit, and they played Jared Vanderbilt.
Jarrett Culver at the 4 as well.
He got traded. Where did Jarrett Culver go?
He went to Memphis. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. As far away as possible. They've got some good role players on this team, but it's like, I don't know. I'm not going to elaborate, but I've learned my lesson. Like prove it, and then maybe we'll talk about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of prove it, and then maybe we'll talk about it. The New Orleans Pelicans are up next, and their number was set at 35. They added Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, Kira Lewis Jr., and Willie Hernan Gomez, and they lost Drew Holiday, Derek Favors, and Etuan Moore and Jahlil Okafor. What did you go here?
I went under.
You went under, and I went over. pretty much we can just copy paste what we just said with the Minnesota Timberwolves there. Now they went under. They ended up with 31 wins as opposed to 35. So you get the point there. And look, this is the same thing. But one thing I was a little bit, unimpressed with was the whole point that they got Stan Van Gundy and they sort of 1 in the hand versus 2 in the bush. Instead of trying to get a high ceiling coach, they just went with this coach, which is, a proven commodity, makes you better, does this. He's not going to be the best, but he's not going to be the worst. Turns out he was actually the worst. So they got the worst of both worlds here because they got no upside and they had to fire him 1 year into his 3-year contract. So, Dan.
See, I disagree with that because I think that the logic for hiring him was very clear.
Mm-hmm.
This is a young team, doesn't always defend, a bit amorphous, and he's a guy who's going to impose a bit of rigidity, and he's going to bring a defensive system that's been like, I'm air quotes here, but like proven, because the Orlando stand, wow, don't talk about the defenses in Detroit because even though they were more recent, we don't need to talk about it. But I think you could very easily kind of lay out what the logic was. It was just clear that there was a misapplication of that logic and that he wasn't the guy. And for whatever reason, be that communication issues with the players, which was like rumored, that they kind of were like, oh no, we don't really like this guy's coaching style. Which is fair enough because obviously he's quite an abrasive, abrupt character. But I mean, I feel like we're beating a dead horse here, but it kind of comes back to David Griffin. Fire David Griffin because he's just made fucking weird decisions everywhere. Not having any shooting on the team seems like it's a bit of a mistake when your best player is a dude who just can't shoot. And Stan deserves some credit for kind of unleashing Point Zion, in the second half of the season.
But no, I feel like that would have happened regardless. I feel like that's inevitable.
Just because a lot of people would have done it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve credit for doing it.
I disagree, man. I reckon they have any coach here, and you get to that point in the season, it's like, okay, Zion, can you do something else for me, please? I'll give him a tiny bit of credit, but I'm not going to say Stan Van Gundy's revolutionizing this offense.
Okay, well that's fair enough. They got off to a rough start, rolling out Bledsoe, Lonzo, Ingram, Zion, and Adams, which is you got 1.5 shooters in that.
Was JJ Redick still playing for him at the start of the year?
Well, JJ Redick, I don't think he was actually playing. I think he was on the roster, but obviously that ended very sour. But the thing that I think has gotten lost in the shuffle, and we kind of talked about it on some of the recent episodes with Lonzo Ball and me being a little bit skeptical about where that jump shot actually is. The reason why Lonzo Ball was in trade talks last season is because bloke was shooting 30% from 3. He was bricking it for the first 30 games of the season. And they were like, we may as well just get rid of him now. And then we did a podcast, it's fortuitous timing. We did a podcast talking about Lonzo to the Bulls, which the trade was going to be Lonzo for Markkanen was what was rumored. And from then he just started banging him in, and he had a couple games where he hit 7, 8, 9 threes. And, his number ended up bumping up to 37, 38 because he just caught fire. But for half of the season, bloke couldn't shoot. And it's well, you can throw all of the 3/4 court hit-ahead passes to Zion to a dunk that you want, but the roster construction with your 2 centers who you're playing, what the fuck is Jackson Hayes even? What even is he? What's he even doing here? Your 2 centers, none of them can shoot. Your 2 point guards, none of them can shoot. Ingram, whatever, maybe he's an East All-Star moving forward. Maybe he's the 30th best guy in the league. And then your only real bright spots aside from Zion, from a team building standpoint, is potentially Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Kira Lewis, but neither of them really played enough to figure heavily in plans moving forward. You're not penciling them in as the starter and saying we're happy with this. So I guess it's just a long way of saying fire David Griffin. David Griffin as a GM is washed.
Okay, 2 things here. firstly, Miles Turner was on the trade block last offseason and they didn't move for him. That was actually like stated that David Griffin did not want Miles Turner. Who doesn't want a fucking rim protecting 3-point shooting dude next to your fucking star power forward who needs exactly that?
Well, I mean, to be fair, apparently the whole fucking league, because Miles Turner was offered around to everybody and everyone declined.
Yeah, well, Boston didn't want him because they didn't want to take on Doug McDermott's contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird hindsight. Danny Ainge has appropriately left. I don't think David Griffin, like you say, he's washed, but was he ever good?
Yes, he was good.
What did he do? He got Timofey Mozgov, and then he played hardball with Tristan Thompson and lost.
He also was the GM for the Suns towards the end of the Suns run. And,
I was thinking about Cleveland only.
There's a couple of conference championship appearances and 55 win teams in there that he was the architect of. And I mean, you win a championship as a GM, you deserve credit. Obviously, you win a championship with a LeBron team. Maybe you do.
Maybe a little bit worse.
Maybe you don't deserve as much credit as Donnie Nelson for assembling the 2011 Mavs. It's not on that level of wow, everyone just deserves 10 pats on the back for this. Maybe you only deserve 7. But he still deserves 7, It's not nothing.
He traded for Mozgov, who played in his first year, but then was pretty much unplayable in 2016 when they actually won the title.
But be fair, Mozgov was instrumental that year. He was fucking huge in the finals that first year.
Yeah, and they lost, right? And do you really think a slow-footed 7-foot Russian dude is the answer to Steph Curry and the death lineup?
Hey, it was 2015. No one could have foreseen that the league was going to, spread to more threes.
All right, but do you want to say that about your GM, that he just straight up didn't know and he's not innovative enough to know that?
Well, I was being facetious because it was pretty fucking obvious.
Okay. Well, our cameras are turned off. I couldn't tell. And then he traded for Shumpert and then just happened to get J.R. Smith, who turned out to be the better player in that deal.
Yeah.
LeBron championship.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of whether he's whether he's been washed for a while now, I think he's done an objectively bad job team building in New Orleans. So,
yep. All right, well, moving on to a team that has done a great job at team building, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Their number was set at 22.5. They added, this is a long list that is completely irrelevant. They added Trevor Ariza, Al Horford, George Hill, Ty Jerome, TJ Leaf, and Alexei Pokusevski. They lost Steven Adams, Chris Paul, Andre Roberson, Rip, Dennis Schroeder, Nerlens Noel, and Danilo Gallinari. We both went under, and we both were. We were correct here. Why did I highlight it as red? We got it right. So the number was 22.5. They finished with 22, and we both hit the under, so we both got it right. And this team is. It doesn't even feel like a basketball team. Just the fact that they were just using this team just to slowly pass time so they could get a good pick and then just take on all these bad contracts. And this is not a basketball team, and we got it right.
This kind of feels like Sam Presti playing 2K, but he's simming the seasons and he's just playing it like you do just for the trades, just trying to build the roster construction. But in our it's meta, so bear with me. But in our reality, the simulated games that he's simulating, we watch them, and so that's the team that we actually watch. And he's literally just chilling, being okay, I'll fucking take on Al Horford for an extra first round pick, and then he's going in the trade, the trade simulator. He's 2.5 star value first round picks, trying to trade out. Because yes, you're right. It was more like a lab than an actual basketball team. And I think we correctly predicted that they would try really, really, really hard to not win.
Al Horford just stopped playing basketball halfway through the year, and the league was like, okay.
Yeah, they're okay, Matt. Trevor Ariza got traded. George Hill got traded to Philly. SGA, we don't know the severity of the injury. Maybe it was legit, but benefit of the doubt here, I think not. He was shut down for half the season. Lots and lots of Kenrich Williams. Lots of Darius Baisley, who I'll like I said at the top of this episode, like we're about accountability, and I was very big on Darius Bazley going into last season. Turns out maybe not. So yeah, this is a team that I think we correctly predicted was going to try really hard to not be good, and lo and behold, Sean, not good.
Yeah, I don't think we have to say anything more. We'll talk about OKC in the future when they're amazing. Phoenix Suns, their number was set at 38. They added Jake Rader, Chris Paul, Etwan Moore, Langston Galloway, and Damian Jones. They lost Aaron Baines, Ty Jerome, Frank Kaminsky. What do you call him? Franco Minsky.
Yeah, it's Franka Minsky.
And Kelly Oubre and Rick Rubio. And you went over and I went over because apparently you made me go over. And holy shit, thank you for giving me an extra point because we both got this one right. They finished with 51 wins, first in the West, second in the West. And obviously made that run to the finals before promptly losing to the Bucks, which have renamed
it wasn't
Wednesday,
that prompt.
which renamed Wednesdays to Bucks and 6 Day.
All right, happy Bucks in 6 days for a couple of days time, everyone. I went positive, like I went over for this purely because positive vibes. And fucking positive as, bro. I mean, what more needs to be said about this team other than just exuding positive vibes the whole way through? Pretty sick. I mean, I'm still buzzing from it all.
Wait, hang on. How's Frank Kaminsky a notable loss, but he ended up on the roster? What happened?
We cut him, and he signed on a minimum with Sacramento, who then cut him, and then we re-signed him like 4 games into the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you probably would have won the title if you had Aaron Baines. Like, if you just had a competent backup center.
Yeah, I mean, like Frank the Tank is one of those guys who has a special place in my heart when he comes in as like, fuck's sake, not this guy.
He played his ass off in Game 6, though.
Yeah, he did. He when those little like half spin floater push shots go in, and he competently runs a DHO, you're like, oh yeah, I can see it. And then he just does anything else, and you're like,
Wisconsin national title. Whoa.
Yeah, I think he was the player of the year that year. Famously, Michael Jordan turned down 4 first-round picks from the Boston Celtics to take him. But that's neither here nor there. This was a magical season for the Phoenix Suns. Obliterated the expectation, both for myself, you, the basketball community, and the Vegas odds. So fucking hectic. Love it. We'll see what they can do next year.
Do you want to know the starting lineup for that Wisconsin? Oh wait, who won? Oh no, so Duke beat Wisconsin in that national title game. It was Josh Gasser, Bronson Keong, Nigel Hayes, Sam Decker, and Frank Kaminsky versus Tyus Jones, Quinn Cook, Matt Jones, Justice Winslow, and Jahlil Okafor.
Well, Nigel Hayes had a cup of coffee from Wisconsin, and obviously, Sam Decker did too. Sam Decker was a first-round pick. And then a couple of those Duke guys, they're there. They're still around. That's
the best.
To varying degrees. Like, how around is Justice Winslow?
Yeah.
We probably wish Jahlil Okafor wasn't around. Like, Jahlil, go to fucking Europe and average 24.
He wasn't getting minutes in FIBA for Nigeria.
Well, just go to fucking Spain. And
No. Go to Australia. Play in the NBL. I would pay money to watch him.
Yeah, I mean, him on the Perth Wildcats. Okay, dump it down. Dump it down, big fella. But go somewhere where you can play and be good. Go somewhere where your skills are valuable. I mean, it's tough. And he's slimmed down so much. He's clearly tried really hard. But
he's vegan already, man. He's going out at all stops.
My God, we got to stop Chris Paul, man. We got to stop Chris Paul. He's converting everyone. Yeah, I feel a bit bad for Ja. Part of me saying big fella, go. It's not I want what's best for you. It's like seriously, go. I don't want to have to think about you.
Jesus Christ, man, that's that's the worst thing you've ever said.
No, I've said worse. I'm sure I've said worse.
All right. Next up is the Portland Trailblazers, whose number was set at 40.5. They added Rocco, Enos the Penis Cantor, Derek Jones Jr., and Harry Giles, and they lost Trevor Reza, Hassan Whiteside, and Mario Hazonia. They ended up with 42 wins. We both hit the over. We both got it right. I talked about the depth. I really like the Rocco ad. Actually, I really like the Derek Jones Jr. ad as well. But yeah, this team just was pretty uninspiring and just crawled over and snuck into the playoffs and lost to Denver without their second best player.
Yeah, I mean, like this team, yeah, you're right. Uninspiring is the word. I'm amazed that they made the over, to be honest. Again, accountability. I spent much of the offseason pretty much fighting you and the JVG boys, Lucas and Marco, plus less as well on our 4-man weave podcasts, basically saying like this team's fucking good. This team is going to be really good. Like you're underrating these guys, and like I mean, uninspiring as all hell. Nurk couldn't get healthy, couldn't get going. CJ 3J missed a lot of time with his foot. The two wing additions, Rocco and Derek Jones, did not work whatsoever.
I like what Lucas says, where he says Portland is where role players go to die.
Yeah, proper. Maybe Mo Harkless was good all along, and it was just Portland that was bad. And obviously they swung, the Gary Trent trade for Norman Powell at the deadline, and that didn't really like jumpstart or give them heaps of life. And
fuck, who would have guessed it?
Yeah, I think looking forward puts them in a bit of a team building hole, because like to shout out Lucas again, he's correctly surmised that they now effectively have 3 of the exact same type of player in their backcourt, all earning 18 million plus after Powell's big extension. I think I'm talking about this team like they didn't hit the over, but like I mean, like it was not a good season for them, and it's fair to wonder now like where Nurk is at, because it's now an injury lost season and then an injury hampered season, and he wasn't good when he was around last season. It's a far cry from 3 years ago when I think he was genuinely, for like a half season stretch, like maybe like a top 3 center in the league. If he's not great, then it's pretty much just your 3 scoring guards. And I mean, like that's the forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's like the 2012 Milwaukee Bucks with Brandon Jennings and Monte Ellis. And I think I remember how that story ended. So yeah, I mean, like they scraped the over here. We both get the points, but like, yeah, left a very bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, the Sacramento Kings, whose number was set at 29. They added Frank Kaminsky, they added Glenn Robinson III, Tyrese Halliburton, and Hassan Whiteside, while losing Kent Bazemore, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Harry Giles III, and Alex Len. I don't actually know what I would have gone, but I can guarantee that it would have been under, because after the absolute debacle that was 2 off seasons ago, with us just fucking drinking the Kool-Aid so hard. Wait, you talk about the Monte McNair Kool-Aid? Oh, I know you and I buying into
Darren
Fox is a good player.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, two seasons ago we were. Yeah, we were like, this is the team. They're making the playoffs, and obviously we were so unbelievably wrong. So
I love how we pitched the deep 210 to the Kings.
Yeah, that was like our inaugural.
Our take. We were going to be known for that.
Yeah, Yeah, pretty well. Well, you know what, Sean, we've come a long way. So
Yeah, well, I was I remember recording this and just going on about Monty McNair's vision. Remember, I said I was wandering through the desert and I wasn't hallucinating. I came across an oasis and I was sitting there and I started drinking the oasis filled with Monty McNair Kool-Aid, and I was just talking about how they've got a tank and they had big visions for this team, and our take about the Kings being good is soon to come to fruition. And now they just drafted off day Donovan Mitchell. Sorry, did I say Donovan Mitchell?
you did say Donovan.
Yeah, so like the Kool-Aid, hasn't resulted in too much thus far.
I think I got food poisoning from drinking from the fountain of Monty McNair.
We should rename it Coddies instead of Kool-Aid, because like I've never drunk Kool-Aid in my life.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do that from here. Let's
right.
let's Australianize it.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Just alienate like 10% of our audience. Coddies
No,
is a cordial.
We can. No, I mean, like, so the US listeners, not fuck you, but like, we're an Australian podcast. Forgive us. We're drinking raspberry coddies, or we're drinking lime coddies.
Raspberry. No way. I'm drinking lime. Green. I'm not drinking green, bro.
You didn't get off on the green when you were a kid.
You know what they call green cordial?
What?
The sticky icky.
Oh my god! Well, we've done 4 minutes on the Kings, and all we've talked about is cordial. So I mean
that says something. All right, moving on to the San Antonio Spurs, whose number was set at 30. They added Devin Vassell and they lost Marco Bellinelli and Bryn Forbes. You went under, I went under, and we both got it wrong because the Spurs got 33 wins and DeMar DeRozan was playing the power forward position, and it was actually really interesting. They started off the season with LaMarcus Aldridge on their roster. How about that?
Man, that seems like it was 14 years ago. Yeah,
nothing to add. Please jump in.
I mean, the Spurs, were probably just copy and paste the Grizzlies chat here, because they go so deep with good players, and none of them I'm not particularly enthusiastic about any of them. Even the guards that they've got with Murray and White and maybe Lonnie Walker the fourth if you squint. They just got heaps of good role players who would be really good on other teams. And
Rudy Gay, Derek White.
There's 10 of them, and on any given night, 6 or 7 of them will turn it on, and you're going to feast on the shitty teams of the league if 6 or 7 of your role players have a good night. And obviously, Pop, what needs to be said about him, he's the best coach ever. He's closing in on Donnie Nelson's all-time wins record, which he'll probably get next season. They're just, I don't know, dare I say the deep two catchphrase, the war cry, treadmill of mediocrity, but that's where they are at this point. It just kind of feels like they're playing out the rope to get Pop the wins total, and then they're gonna like shut it down and say, all right, like, who wants to give us a first round pick for Derek White? Like, he's yours, take him.
Yeah. So Greg Popovich currently has 1,310 wins, and Don Nelson has 1,335. Next season, does this team win 25 games?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's going to be the same again. It's just going to be like Derek White will be healthy, like he wasn't this year, and he'll pop off for 19-7 and get them over the line. And Murray's a genuinely like elite level defender, and hopefully his shooting rebounds, and maybe Devin Vassell takes a jump forward, or your boy Josh Primo, son of the Primo family cold cut meats empire, the heir to the Primo cold cut meat empire,
and makes Primo juice on the side.
Maybe they pop in, I just, this team has a pretty hard ceiling on it by virtue of not actually having that many good players on it. But Pop and a collection of good role players, they'll get 25. They'll make it happen.
Yeah. Devin Vassell scored like 27 points on 40 shots in the summer league.
Like total or in one game?
No, in one game. In one game,
Westbrooked it.
No, he just took every shot. It's like, this dude clearly has another dimension to his game. I thought he was just 3-and-D. Apparently, he can just take a lot of shots as well.
Did you say 27 on 40 shots?
Something like that. That was a guess, but he took 40 shots, man.
He must have gone like 11 of 40 from the field to get that number. That's not good.
Let me do some Googling.
That is like straight up like small guard, like sub 40 numbers. It's like Devontae Graham numbers. I hate to say it, but Devontae Graham, early career Rick Rubio, just like, addicted to the 37%.
Vassell admits he was a bit rusty in his first Summer League game Wednesday, in which he went 6 for 17 in the Spurs' 87-58 loss to the Utah Jazz.
58, fucking hell.
Yeah. Oops. All right, now
bring the fire extinguisher for the Nets.
Final team. We've got the Utah Jazz, whose number was set at 41. Flat. They added Derek Favors and they lost Tony Bradley and Ed Davis. We both went over and they hit the over. They ended up with 52 wins, first in the West, first in the Wrighton Conference. I wrote that they have Spursian vibes that push them over the 50 number, and I was spot on. Bojan Bogdanovic held on to the talent that he has, and Joe Ingles is obviously incredible. And yeah, this is just sort of, we know what the Utah Jazz are for the next 3 years, and we knew what they were last year, and we got it right.
Well, I don't think I was quite as high on them as you. I wasn't pitching them as like genuine contenders, which they proved to be. But I feel like this season, whilst being an unmitigated success because they were the clear best team in the league for the whole fucking season, it's kind of like, revealed the ceiling that they didn't know that they had, or that we didn't know that they had, because one of the talking points we've got here is like, how much can Donovan Mitchell grow? And I'd say that, he's now someone who in the playoffs I would want on my team, just as like a shot maker, when it doesn't matter if you shoot 43% from the field because it's the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's someone who can, like, 30 seconds left, you need a bucket. He's someone you can rely on. But Gobert's about to be paid $500 million a year, and Conley's just extended for, roughly mid-20s for another few years, and he's getting older. And Bogdanovic, you mentioned he's hanging on to it, but he was injured for, part of the season, and I don't think it's, out of line to say that we might see some regression there. So they're about to be locked in with those 4 dudes on big contracts, and they haven't really done the moves around the margins that we might have seen. I think Georges Niang played a lot of minutes for them. He's gone. Derek Favors, they couldn't wait to get rid of him.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% convinced like where the quality role players coming outside of
they added Rudy Gay and they added Hassan Whiteside.
Well, I mean, like, fucking let's pencil them in for 60 wins next season. They added Hassan Whiteside.
But that's the thing, like, they probably will. Like, this is a team built to excel in the regular season.
every team in the top 4 of the West is going to be like looking at them in the second round being like, we want to be on Utah's side of the bracket. Like, there's
100%
going to be no one in the West who's like
Denver would have made
scared.
the conference finals without Jamal Murray if they were on Utah's side of the bracket.
Yeah, because Jokic is just Gobert's kryptonite. I mean, Jokic is everyone's kryptonite, but particularly Gobert. Like, it's watching them play each other is genuinely just like a joy, because like Jokic just puts him in a very specific type of blender.
And you said it right. I love watching them two play, and also the fact that Jokic is a dude who, like, one thing you could argue about him is that he doesn't look like he has that sort of competitive flair in him. But every single time he goes up against a good center, he always just sort of says something to the media. He's always just like, it's going to be interesting to go up a defensive player of the year caliber player. And then he just kicks the everlasting shit out of Kat, Embiid, or Rudy Gobert. He really cares about the personal matchups. And that's one thing that I love about him.
I mean, Tell it to Campaign's face that he doesn't think that you don't think that Jokic has a competitive flair to him. I would potentially argue that I mean,
he does. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but the argument would be like, look at this lumbering white dude from Serbia.
Yeah. The downside for this team like next season is Ingles getting a little bit older. I'm not, again, unfair to project a little bit of fall off from him. Clarkson Sixth man of the year, deservedly so. Give him his flowers. But are you 100% confident that Clarkson's going to be a high efficiency 20-point-a-game scorer again next season? If you are, power to you. And I'd like some of your tips on living like a positive life. But it's not impossible that, he kind of comes back down to earth in the 13, 14, 15 points a game range, and he's not scorching the nets as much. And then it's like, fuck, if you're maybe penciling in some regression from your role players and one of your big four guys is not what they need to be, then it's not hard to see. I think that they'll still be comfortably, an elite regular season team, just because Quinn Snyder's a really good coach, and they'll figure out a way to get the machine whirring around like it did this season. But just in terms of like postseason, you're kind of relying on maybe filing the natural passage of time, or it's possible that Clarkson was a bit like lightning in the bottle, and Rudy Gay's been very injured for the past couple of years. So not like, I'm not penciling him in like I'm Jeff Green in Denver and saying, wow, like what a great signing. They have so much positional flexibility, because part of, positional flexibility is actually being on the court. So I think that there's heaps of optimism that they'll be a really good regular season team, but enough reason for concern that it makes me a bit icky. And if I had to, I know we're not doing predictions now, but like I'm definitely picking them to go out in the second round of the playoffs again.
Yeah, no, good shout. And also when we made this prediction, Donovan Mitchell was resharing all those posts where people were comparing him to prime Dwayne Wade, and it was just a little bit weird, and he was just sort of like acting larger than thou. And look, he didn't break out and win an MVP. He just got a little bit better.
Prime Dwayne Wade was a scoring champ and won a title in his third season. So let's settle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he like Mitchell is like, he's not one of these dudes who I usually would like. Just, I think everyone by now knows how I feel about small guards who struggle to crack the 40s on the number that says FG. But there is something about him in the playoffs that's like, I need a bucket. I trust him to go and get it for me. And if I'm down 21 in the second quarter of a playoff game, like I trust that I can give the keys to him and he'll kind of like pull me back into something resembling contention, because he just has that like playoff it factor. So that's one thing kind of going in their favor. But obviously this year we saw that no matter how much it factor he has, like there's some fundamental roster construction issues here that are simultaneously the great strength of the team, but also make them so easy to exploit if you're a well-prepared team tactically in the postseason.
Yep. All right. Well, that's it for the Western Conference over unders. We will be doing the Eastern Conference next episode, but I reckon we hold off on the numbers until we actually get them.
We'll keep you in suspense.
Yeah. No, good shout. Were there any further points you wanted to make on the West?
Not on the West, but on the website, replacing one W for another. You just had a piece go up on Jordan Poole. I was going to say Swaggy Poole, but I kind of stopped myself because he's Jordan now.
He's another one of those great Jordans.
If you want a little bit of optimism, a little bit of a ray of sunshine for your day, this is the article for you, because it's a very positive look ahead at what Jordan Poole's role might be on the revamped Warriors. And it was a good read. So head over to thedeep2.com. Can't believe it's that easy. Can't
believe it's not butter.
and check that out. And as always, make sure that you're following us on socials. We're everywhere, including LinkedIn. And like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.